The day with Ray. Hello, my friends and ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to jump on the gigantic Sharp Interactive board and we're going to go through Rico's first 9 months, FY23. The numbers are in. And folks, I wanted to put a picture on the cover sheet for today's presentation. And I chose to use a pole vaulter. The problem is the pole's only a foot off the ground. Not a real challenge. Basically, you can just walk right over it. And I'm sharing that because I still believe that Rico just can't set goals that are worthy. It's like the pole vaulter. I'm going to win. Yeah, you're not going to win. What are you winning at? All you got to do is step over the bar because the bar's too low. As Rico, you got to raise the bar. You got to raise the bar in everything you're doing. You got to raise the bar when you're going into the marketplace and be able to sell things for the right price so you can have the right profitability. Rico, becoming a digital services company will take major changes in your profit management. Becoming a digital services company, I know you aspire to do that. You're going to have to make major changes in your profit management. And today I want to share some thoughts because Rico is doing some things that I do appreciate in the way that they share their numbers. And Rico has a potential like anybody else to be successful being a digital services company. Unfortunately, you're never going to be a digital services company if you run it like it's a print services company because the two are so damn different. And unfortunately, this is one of my worrisomes for the OEMs that sell and manufacture products. It's really hard to go into the market and sell things you don't manufacture. It's really hard to be a services company. And at the end of the day, when you look at some of the examples that are out there, our friends at Konica Minolta, the great example, I believe to be a disaster. And Rico, you're not far behind. The only difference between Rico and Konica Minolta is Rico actually produces operating profit. The problem is they set the bar too low. So ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Rico's numbers. Top line revenue for the first 9 months was $11.5 billion. Operating profit was $250.9 million, 2.2%. And you can see over here where they forecasted for the year, for this year, we're in the last quarter, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the goal is way too damn low. They're forecasting 2.6% operating profit. And quite honestly, I don't believe they're even going to hit that. They've got to raise the bar. It's just way too low. We all know that Rico has business segments. They have the Rico Digital Services. And in that digital services, we have office services, we have office printing, and other. Mainly, it's office printing and office services. In the office services business segment, we got IT infrastructure, including hardware, IT services, application services, communication services, including hardware, and business process services. In the office printing, obviously, hardware, MFPs, printers, non-hardware consumables, and services and support. We're going to focus pretty heavily today in that digital services sector. When Rico finishes their FY 2023, we'll get into more details, kind of like I did at their first half. But ladies and gentlemen, Rico really wants to be a digital services company. And if they're going to succeed at it, they've got to be able to raise the bar on profitability. I will congratulate Rico. I will congratulate Rico for doing this joint venture with Toshiba Tech on the consolidation of manufacturing. I think that's a great move. That's a great move, and we're going to see more of that, and I believe there'll be more people that will even join the Rico Toshiba Tech consortium now. They call that, I forgot to use the Google machine to see how to pronounce that. I'm just going to call it the ETRIA group. Okay, that's the corporation they formed with this. And they're going to have Toshiba products, they're going to have Rico products, but they're going to be made at the same place. That's a great deal. I also want to congratulate Rico for the way they present their numbers. I believe Rico does a really good job presenting their numbers. The numbers are just too damn low. But what they don't do is they don't present the operating profit numbers with the detail that they present the revenue numbers. And if they would just do that, first of all, I believe if Rico really addressed the operating profit per bucket, per deliverable, and really focused on it, they would improve their profit. When they lump stuff all together, well, I think it allows poor management to stay poor, if you will. So now let's look at this digital products group. And folks, the digital products group, that's the office printing, development, and manufacturing, hardware, MFPs, printers and communication devices, non-hardware consumables, and other scanners and electrical units. That group did $2.4 billion for the 9 months. They had an operating profit of $56.1 million, 3%. It'll be in this group where the Toshiba Tech and Rico joint venture will be part of this somehow, is my vision, okay? But ladies and gentlemen, if you look a year ago, same period of time, they had a $202.1 million operating profit at 8.1%. On revenue at $2.5 billion. The revenue only dropped $100 million or so, but the operating profit went into the toilet. They say over here that the scanner sales were sluggish because of lackluster IT investments in the Americas. And I'm thinking, well, they didn't read the same thing I read in the PR news wire, so I want to share that with you. New York, October 26, 2023, PR News. Mid-market technology spending at its highest level since before the pandemic, according to Deloitte Private 2023 Mid-Market Technology Trends Report. More than half, 53% of the respondents said their organizations are spending above 5% of revenue on technology in 2023, up from a peak of only 43% prior, and dramatic recovery from only 20% mid-pandemic in 2021. So they're spending more on technology. But Rico, here's the reality. When you said people are buying less scanners, it wasn't because they're spending less on technology. They're spending on technology, and today's technology and its capabilities, well, you don't need scanners. When Rico got together and bought that scanner division from Fujitsu, I always say that wrong. Someone will correct me, I'm sure. I was kind of critical of that. I said, what the hell are you doing? I mean, Panasonic, they gave away their scanner division, basically threw it in the trash. We're done. They didn't even sell it. and Rico's over there investing in this scanner thing, and I never thought that was a good investment. I think that'll never turn out to be anything special. But there we go. IT spending's up. It's not down. The one thing that Rico does pretty well is they really have a geography focus around their services business. And I shared a lot of the details of these different geographies when I did the first half results for Rico. But ladies and gentlemen, they really do break this out better than any other OEM, in my opinion. And today what I want to do is I want to talk about all the geographies together. And I want to share some thoughts because I believe this digital services business unit is being run like it's an office printing company. Even though they have office printing and office services, they're running the whole thing like it's a printing company. They have to be because the numbers are kind of saying that. Let me share my thoughts. Office printing total sales for the 9 months were $4.6 billion. Office services total sales for the 9 months were $4 billion. The operating profit for both of those units together was $192.6 million, 2%. Ladies and gentlemen, they say over here they had an increase of $81 million in operating profit in the office services sector for this 9 months compared to the previous 9 months. An increase of $81 million. Some of that was based on the Forex, I'm sure. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, my concern is we only did 2% operating profit on $9.1 billion of revenue, $4 billion of which is in services. What in the world is the operating profit for just those office services? Rico, you have to figure this out. You got to be able to tell the world what these numbers are. And I believe if you focused on that operating profit of the services business, your operating profit would increase. If you're going to lump it all together and run it like it's a big old copier business that sells services, you're never going to hit the right operating profit numbers, and you're going to end up, in my opinion, the same place Konica Minolta is. What you do really well, Rico, is you really break it out. You really break out the deliverable buckets in that services business. IT infrastructure, hardware and software, IT services, including maintenance and outsourcing, application services, business-specific apps and in-house apps, communication services, business process services. You went down here and you broke out all the revenue for the reoccurring revenue. That's awesome. It's all about reoccurring revenue, but that reoccurring revenue has to be with a high profit. It can't be like selling the MFP. What are you doing it for? 0.002? We'll do it for 0.001. We'll give you 500 million copies free, and then we'll charge you 0.001. I mean, folks, at the end of the day, services has to be treated a whole lot different than print. I believe that the office services business should be in a bucket all by itself and have nothing to do with print. The revenue and the operating profit for office services should be clearly highlighted and shared, and then the disciplines will occur needed to grow that revenue. Because at the end of the day, the operating profit for this group as a whole is too low. 2%. You got equal amount of revenue, just about. You got $4.6 billion in office printing, you got $4 billion in office services. A 2% operating profit is terrible. Let's talk about this graphics communication business. You know, I got to ask you the same question I asked Konica, Rico. Why the hell are you in this industrial printing to begin with? Seriously. It's $193.4 million in revenue for the first 9 months. I mean, it represents 1.7% of Rico's total sales. The operating profit for this whole business unit, which is commercial printing and industrial printing, is $69.7 million, 5.5% on a total revenue of $1.3 billion. But $1.1 billion of it is in the commercial printing. Rico, I suggest you stay in the commercial printing and you get better at that. Call up Konica and see if they'll buy your industrial printing. They probably will. And let them deal with that. How big are you going to grow that? How many machines are you really going to sell a year? Is it really going to help you be a services company? Really? I don't think it is. I think it's dragging down the operating profit of the commercial printing space. I think it's something you're doing because our industry has an obsession that they have to be selling this industrial print equipment. I guess when they get together, the executives, they want to show who has the bigger machine or something. I don't know, but I think it's nuts and you're not making enough money at it. And I really believe you ought to get out of the space. Because quite honestly, here's a scary thing. The operating profit for this group, graphics communication, represents 28% of Rico's total operating profit. But I really believe that that operating profit that you're seeing is coming out of the commercial printing, not out of the industrial printing. Because at the end of the day, there's just not enough revenue there. $193 million over 9 months. Rico, something to think about, but I think if you really thought hard about it, meeting with other executives in the industry, showing each other who's got the bigger machine, that's not going to be near as exciting as meeting with the other executives in the industry and showing them how great of a digital services company you've become. Please think hard about that. Let's talk about this industrial solutions and other. You know, at the end of the day, I'll dig more into this at the end of the year, but I do want to say this about the other category. Whoever's running other has it made. I mean, they get in the boardroom and finally they get to them. How's other doing? Well, we're still sucking. I mean, we're still not making any money. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole thing's nuts to me. Get out of the other business too. I wanted to look at the financial position of the company and compare them a little bit with Konica. The first thing I wanted to do is look at their asset to equity ratio. At Rico, we got $14.9 billion in assets as of December 31st, 2023. And we have total liabilities of $8.1 billion. Equity is $6.8 billion. Asset to equity ratio is 45.63%, meaning 54.37% of assets are encumbered. But Rico, you do have a problem here. The problem is you got $2.7 billion in goodwill as part of your assets. That's 18% of your assets, and I believe that's way too high. When you compare that situation to Konica, Konica has 62% of their assets encumbered. So, you know, a lot more of their assets are encumbered than Rico. But Konica also has really high goodwill at $1.8 billion, which represents 20% of their assets, way too high. So when I was comparing Konica to the other OEMs this week, and I would say you don't want to be them, and I put a big X through it, Rico, I got to say you don't want this either. So I got to put an X through both of you. You got to get that in better shape. I wanted to look at some costs. If you look over here at Rico, their cost of sales is 64.9% compared to Konica at 57%. But ladies and gentlemen, it's all about those selling and general expenses. Konica Minolta, 42%. At Rico, it's 33.4%. Rico's barely squeezing out some profitability, and we've seen their profitability barely being squeezed out over the last few years. But at the end of the day, I don't believe they can become a digital services company if they run that digital services business like it's a copier company selling digital services. Rico, you need to be a digital services company. You were right about 3 years ago when you went in the marketplace and you told the whole world that's what you were going to do. And the stock market, the investors appreciated that. And then what did you do? You went on that crazy whirlwind tour and told everybody you made a mistake and you really care about print. Rico. You'll sell print till people stop printing. You're good at it. What you need to do, if you're going to be a digital services company, get that thing fixed. Make it profitable. Otherwise, well, the way I put an X through Konica, I'll be putting an X through Rico, because nothing will ever change. And if nothing ever changes, we all know this, status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.